He was the golden boy of country music. She was Hollywood royalty. Together, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman seemed untouchable, a love story that defied fame, distance, and the endless noise of celebrity life. For nearly 20 years, they were the couple. Every red carpet smile, every tender interview, every song Keith wrote for her painted the image of a man deeply in love and a woman who had finally found peace after heartbreak. But behind the shimmering surface, behind the awards, the photos, the hand-in-hand moments that millions adored, something was quietly breaking. No one saw it, not until it was already gone. And when Keith Urban finally broke his silence, his confession shattered everything fans thought they knew, because this wasn't just the story of a marriage ending. It was the story of a man confronting his own demons and admitting, in his own words, "I blew it to smithereens." What really happened behind closed doors? Why did the fairy tale crumble after 2 decades of love, fame, and shared dreams? Tonight, we uncover the truth, the rise, the fall, and the haunting honesty behind Keith Urban's final confession about Nicole Kidman. When Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman first crossed paths in 2005, the world called it fate. She had just stepped out of the shadow of a decade-long marriage to Tom Cruise, a union that had tested her faith, her identity, and her strength. Nicole was searching for peace, something real, something steady. Keith, on the other hand, was already climbing toward a stardom in Nashville. With his guitar, his soulful voice, and a quiet humility that contrasted the glitz of Hollywood, he seemed to be everything Nicole needed: gentle, grounded, and sincere. Their connection was instant, yet unhurried. Long conversations turned into deep understanding, and before anyone could blink, love bloomed in the most unexpected way. By June 2006, they stood together in Sydney, exchanging vows under the soft Australian light. Nicole, in a flowing Balenciaga gown, looked like a dream. Keith sang for her that night, not as a superstar, but as a man completely in love. The world looked on and believed they had witnessed something rare, a perfect union between music and cinema, between heart and fame. For years, they nurtured that image. Every red carpet became a stage for affection, every interview a chance to praise one another. Keith's songs carried her name in every line, while Nicole often called him her savior, the man who helped her rediscover laughter after years of quiet pain. In 2024, during an AFI tribute, Keith's voice broke as he thanked Nicole for rescuing him, a heartfelt moment that left the audience in tears. But even then, behind the cameras and the applause, something unseen was shifting. Their careers, the very things that brought them together, were slowly pulling them apart. Nicole's film took her from London to New York to the distant coasts of Australia. Keith's tours stretched for months, city after city, night after night. They were building empires separately, and in the quiet spaces between airports, studios, and hotel rooms, love began to fade into longing. They tried to hold on. Anniversary photos, family vacations, carefully planned getaways with their daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. But no number of smiling pictures could hide the growing silence between them. By early 2025, the truth could no longer stay hidden. The fairy tale everyone believed in was quietly falling apart. Even the strongest bonds can fracture under the weight of time, and fame has a way of magnifying every flaw. For years, fans believed Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman had found the secret to lasting love in Hollywood. They saw the public affection, the red carpet glances, the gentle words in interviews, and mistook them for proof of perfection. But behind closed doors, the cracks were already forming. Their lives were built on opposite rhythms. Nicole's career demanded months on set, London, Paris, Rome, while Keith lived on the road, moving from one concert to another, his nights filled with applause, but his mornings haunted by distance. They tried to bridge that gap. He would fly to visit her between shows. She would rearrange filming schedules for a few days together. They shared family photos on Instagram. Smiles that looked effortless, captions filled with love. But those moments, insiders later revealed, were temporary bandages over deeper wounds. By mid-2025, the signs had become impossible to ignore. Friends noticed that the once playful banter between them had turned into quiet formality. Keith's interviews grew shorter, his smiles more restrained. Nicole began appearing alone at events where they were once inseparable. Still, they fought for normalcy, for the sake of their daughters, Sunday and Faith. Nicole, ever the devoted mother, tried to hold the pieces together. She adjusted her filming schedule, prioritized family dinners when possible, and clung to the hope that love could weather another storm. But the distance was no longer just physical, it had become emotional, an invisible wall that neither of them could name, but both could feel. Keith, in moments of honesty with close friends, admitted how much he leaned on Nicole, not just as a partner, but as an anchor through his struggles with addiction, pressure, and self-doubt. At the 2024 AFI tribute, his tearful thank you, "You saved me," had felt like a declaration of love. Now it sounded more like a quiet confession of dependence. By September 2025, what began as rumors had become reality. The smiles disappeared, the red carpets ended, and the world that once celebrated their perfect love suddenly began asking questions it never dared before. When Keith Urban finally spoke, the world fell silent. There was no PR statement, no polished announcement crafted by Hollywood handlers, just Keith, raw, broken, and brutally honest. "I blew it to smithereens." 6 simple words that shattered the illusion of the perfect marriage. Fans who had followed their love story for nearly 2 decades were stunned. This was the couple who had survived fame, distance, and every storm the tabloids could throw. To hear Keith admit that it had all fallen apart and that he was to blame hit harder than any rumor ever could. The confession came in late September 2025, just as Nicole officially filed for divorce. By then, they had already been living apart for months, their once vibrant home now divided into separate lives. Some speculated about infidelity, others blamed fame. But Keith didn't hide behind excuses. He didn't point fingers, he didn't defend himself, he simply owned it. The exhaustion, the pride, the choices that led to distance, he admitted it all. In doing so, he humanized himself in a way few celebrities ever do. He wasn't Keith Urban, the country music legend. He was Keith, the man who let the woman he loved slip away. For the public, the reaction was mixed. Some admired his courage, the rare humility to face failure openly. Others felt it was too late, that words couldn't mend what was already gone. And through it all, Nicole remained silent. She focused on her daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, shielding them from the noise. Her silence spoke louder than any interview ever could. Social media filled with heartbreak and admiration. Fans mourned not just the end of a marriage, but the end of an ideal, the belief that true love could conquer fame. If Keith and Nicole couldn't make it work, what hope was there for anyone else? Still, beneath the public sorrow, something deeper emerged, a strange respect for honesty, for a man stripped bare of glamour, standing in the ruins of his own mistakes, and finally telling the truth. And yet, the truth was only part of the story, because behind the headlines, a new shadow had begun to grow, one that would soon dominate every conversation, a rumor, a name, a question that would test the limits of what people were willing to believe. When the news of Keith and Nicole's separation broke, the world didn't just react, it exploded. Hollywood thrives on whispers, and in the vacuum of truth, speculation spreads like wildfire. Almost overnight, a name began to circulate. Maggie Ball, Keith's 25-year-old guitarist, who had been touring with him during the final stretch of his marriage. Clips from concerts surfaced online. Fans replayed them frame by frame, analyzing every glance, every lyric, every shared smile on stage. In one video, Keith seemed to change a lyric mid-performance, inserting Maggie's name where Nicole's used to be. To some, it was coincidence. To others, it was confirmation. Even Maggie's father, when asked by reporters, gave a vague, evasive answer that only deepened suspicion. Suddenly, what had been a story of heartbreak turned into a media storm. Neither Keith nor Maggie spoke publicly about the rumors, and Nicole, always poised, always graceful, said nothing. But her silence only added fuel to the fire. To outsiders, the timeline felt damning. Keith and Nicole had reportedly been living apart since early summer 2025, months before the official divorce filing on September 30th. To the public, that gap became fertile ground for imagination. People filled it with their own stories: betrayal, guilt, passion, and loss. For Nicole's friends, the speculation cut deep. They knew how hard she had fought to save the marriage, how many times she had set aside projects, postponed shoots, and put family first. To see the world now linking her husband's name with another woman felt like a wound reopened in front of millions. Keith's supporters, meanwhile, were divided. Some defended him, insisting he was merely misunderstood, a man finding solace in music after emotional collapse. Others were less forgiving, calling the rumors proof that he had indeed blown it to smithereens. No evidence ever surfaced, no confession, no denial, just silence. A heavy, complicated silence that left fans to draw their own conclusions. But behind all the noise, one truth remained clear. The image of Hollywood's golden couple, the power pair who seemed immune to scandal, had finally fallen. And for both Keith and Nicole, the question was no longer why it ended, but how to move forward when the world refused to let them forget. For nearly 2 decades, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman had been more than a couple. They were a symbol of hope, of endurance, of love that could survive the impossible weight of fame. Fans didn't just admire them, they believed in them. Every photo, every interview, every shared laugh seemed to prove that Hollywood's glitter was still protect something pure. But as the years went by, that image became harder to maintain. Behind the picture-perfect smiles, exhaustion crept in. Fame, distance, and the endless rhythm of their separate careers began to erode what once felt unbreakable. Keith spent most of his life on tour, nights filled with spotlights and applause, but mornings haunted by loneliness. Nicole was halfway across the world, immersed in new roles, walking red carpets in Paris, London, or New York, always radiant but often alone, They tried to hold on to their connection through grand gestures, anniversary trips, family vacations with their daughters, Instagram tributes on birthdays and holidays. But those moments, the ones fans clung to, were often more performance than reality. Insiders later revealed that by early 2025, Keith had quietly moved into a separate home. The separation wasn't sudden. It was slow, painful, and inevitable. A quiet drift between two people who had once been inseparable. His public confession, "I blew it to smithereens," wasn't just an apology. It was an acknowledgement that the love story everyone envied had collapsed under the same weight that crushes so many others: pride, fatigue, and the inability to stop time. For Nicole, it was a heartbreak she faced with her trademark grace. After years of fighting to preserve what they had built, she finally chose peace over a struggle. Those close to her said she found solace in family, focusing on her daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, determined to protect them from the world's scrutiny. To the public, the fall of Keith and Nicole felt like the end of an era. A fairy tale undone, not by betrayal or scandal, but by something far more human: distance, pressure, and the quiet unraveling of two people who simply grew apart. Their story became a mirror for countless others, proof that even love dressed in fame and fortune is still fragile, still mortal, still breakable. When the dust finally settled, both Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman were left standing in the quiet aftermath, no longer as husband and wife, but as two individuals rebuilding their lives in the public eye. The divorce was finalized, the headlines faded, and slowly reality set in. For Nicole, the path forward began with her daughters, Sunday Rose, now 17, and Faith Margaret, 14, her constant sources of light. After nearly 2 decades of juggling motherhood and fame, Nicole made one thing clear: her children came first. In October 2025, she made her first public appearance since the split at Paris Fashion Week. There were no tears, no drama, just elegance and calm. She attended with her daughters, smiled for the cameras, and later thanked Chanel on Instagram with quiet gratitude. It was more than just fashion. It was her way of saying, "I'm still here." Those close to her described Nicole as reflective, grounded, and determined not to let the end of her marriage define her story. She had survived heartbreak before, and she knew how to rise from it. For Keith, the journey was more complicated. His confession, that he had blown it to smithereens, had stripped him of the protective armor that fame once offered. But in that vulnerability, he found something unexpected: freedom. He returned to music, pouring his regrets and emotions into songwriting and performances. Audiences noticed the change. His shows felt more personal, his lyrics heavier with meaning. For the first time in years, Keith wasn't just performing, he was confessing through every note. The couple's long-standing prenuptial agreement, one that rewarded Keith for maintaining sobriety, ensured financial stability after the divorce. But beyond contracts and headlines, Keith's greatest challenge was internal, learning how to forgive himself. Friends say he's focused on co-parenting, staying close to Sunday and Faith, and maintaining mutual respect with Nicole. They are no longer partners in marriage, but they remain connected by something deeper: two parents choosing peace over bitterness. Their story isn't one of villains and victims, it's a story of love, real, imperfect human love that ran its course under the harshest light imaginable. And perhaps that's what makes it resonate. Because even in their fall, there is something profoundly universal: the pain of letting go, the courage to begin again, and the wisdom that comes only from heartbreak. In the end, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman remind us of one simple truth. Even the brightest stars eventually fade, but in fading, they reveal something far more beautiful, the quiet strength it takes to shine again.